He said COVID-19 would disappear like a miracle. He said his administration had everything under control. Now the extraordinary news that President Donald Trump and the First Lady have tested positive for the virus. The Trumps tweeting overnight about the diagnosis just hours after news that a senior advisor who had traveled with him on Air Force One became infected. An outpouring of good wishes and criticism has been coming from around the world. Now, many are questioning whether the president should continue his campaign for re-election. And some developing news right now. CNN is reporting Trump's Democratic challenger Joe Biden is expected to get tested for coronavirus this morning. Joining us live now with reaction from Washington and what this all means for the presidential election, CNN's Karin Caifa. Good morning, Karin.
Good morning, Erica.
So just bombshell news. There's a lot to talk about here. But first, just tell me, what has reaction been like where you are?
Well, those who have been in and around Washington for a long time say this is the most significant threat to a president's health since Ronald Reagan was shot in 1981. The seriousness of this, and certainly the timing of this is drawing a lot of concern. There is, of course, the day-to-day governing and how much President Trump will be able to participate in this, given the diagnosis, and we don't yet know what the degree of his illness might be. And, of course, there is the campaign to consider. We are just 32 days away from Election Day here in the United States. There are also concerns around his challenger, Joe Biden, who he just shared a debate stage with in Cleveland 3 days ago. I was at that debate, Erica. I can tell you that the utmost caution was taken in and around the debate hall to make sure that those candidates were protected. And now we have the news that President Trump has tested positive, that Joe Biden is getting a coronavirus test this morning. So it really does, once again, we refer to this 2020 race as unprecedented so often, but really, it's hard to imagine anything like this in recent memory.
Absolutely. And, you know, if he has to isolate, you said 32 days away from this election. It's a critical time right now. How does that affect him being off the campaign trail for the 14 days that he has to isolate?
Yeah, and there is a debate scheduled between the two candidates in just 13 days. And so what happens with that? President Trump is somebody who likes the campaign trail, so much so that he has bucked the recommendations of many public health officials over the last few months to resume holding his large-scale rallies across the country. Joe Biden has taken a far more cautious approach, only really getting back on the road after the Labor Day holiday here in the U.S. But President Trump, again, much to the dismay of many public health officials, has been holding these large-scale rallies, including one in Minnesota just Wednesday night. There was one in Pennsylvania on Saturday. He was scheduled to hold one in Florida tonight. That has been canceled, as has the rest of the president's in-person schedule for today. So the question will become, how does the president campaign? Is he willing to listen to doctors? Is he willing to really protect not only himself and his family, but also those working for him? There is great alarm among others in the West Wing. They were alarmed after a small group of aides heard about Hope Hicks's diagnosis, and certainly this makes it far more alarming. So a lot more to talk about in the coming days, in the coming weeks, but certainly, we talk about the October surprise in the U.S. elections, and this is certainly a stunning one.
And Karin, just one last question here. If it comes to a point where he's too ill to continue and has to pull out of this race, what happens then?
That's a really good question. Of course, his running mate, Vice President Mike Pence, is recommended to quarantine after his proximity to the president. So his campaigning may be limited as well, but he is scheduled to have a debate with Kamala Harris in Salt Lake City in just 5 days. We'll see what happens with that, too. But the degree of campaigning, the appropriateness of campaigning is something, again, that would be entirely unprecedented. We'll have to wait and see what happens over the next 3 or 4 weeks. But remember, Erica, here in the United States, a lot of states have gone ahead and given people options to vote already. More than 1 million or so ballots have already been cast by Americans. So with early voting ongoing, a lot of big questions ahead as to what might happen.
Everything changing just hour by hour. CNN's Karin Caifa, thank you very much for joining us this morning.